After my husband cheated. This video contains the complete unabridged audiobook. I saw an anonymous poll online. When a man cheats, who does he feel guiltier towards, his wife or his mistress? The mistress option got 99% of the votes. I turned to Ethan and asked him, "Do you think so too?" He put down his book, looking at me with tired eyes and an indifferent expression. "Olivia, I've come back," he sighed. "What else do you want?" With furrowed brows, Ethan stood up and walked to the balcony to smoke. From where I sat, his tall, lean silhouette blended into the hazy smoke against the backdrop of the brightly lit city, appearing lonely and desolate. Half an hour later, he came back in with a forced smile, hiding his true feelings. "There's a family day at the company this weekend. Why don't you join me? I'm off work anyway, and we can go shopping afterward and get you some new clothes." Ethan's company occasionally held family day events, but he'd never taken me before. Once, when I asked out of curiosity, he had frowned impatiently and replied, "Those events are for the junior staff. Spots are limited. It wouldn't look good if I took one from them." At this moment, I wanted to ask him badly, "So, you don't care about appearances this time?" But I held back. Since Ethan moved back home, there had been an awkward heaviness between us, a sticky feeling of discomfort that neither of us could ignore. Yes? Sticky. Like something thick lodged in your throat, impossible to swallow or spit out, reminding you constantly of its presence. "All right," I agreed. He smiled faintly, pretending happiness. As he turned away, the smile faded, and he sighed softly. At night, after I'd turned off the lights and prepared for sleep, the door suddenly opened. Ethan walked in quietly. "Asleep?" he asked softly. We'd been sleeping separately since he'd returned. He stayed in the study. On the day Ethan decided to come home, he'd stood at the doorway with his suitcase and said, "Olivia, we both need space and time to heal. Let's sleep separately for now." At that time, I was still overwhelmed by intense emotions. The trauma of betrayal by my closest companion, shame at my own outbursts, a twisted satisfaction at claiming the moral high ground. Every gesture and expression felt exaggerated and distorted. I raised my chin and sneered at him. "Ethan Bennett, what are you thinking? You really think I asked you to come home just to have sex? Do you think everyone's mind is as filthy as yours?" "As you wish," he'd replied calmly, pulling his suitcase into the study. Now he stood quietly beside the bed for a moment. Then, sliding under the covers, his hand slowly moved beneath my clothes, gently caressing my waist. "Olivia, we're still husband and wife?" His voice was thick with suppressed emotions. Strangely, even though it was a simple sentence and I couldn't see his face, I clearly sensed the resignation and bitterness in his tone. It was as if he was begging for intimacy, as if he'd finally given in to fate, as if he were reluctantly submitting to the remaining bond of our marriage, as if he was bestowing mercy on me, his wife of 10 years. Outside, the moon looked down on the earth with cold indifference. Finally, I couldn't hold back anymore. I uttered the name I had avoided mentioning for 3 months. "What about Summer Eastwood? Isn't she the only real wife in your heart?" The air froze instantly. The man behind me exploded in anger, his voice shrill and sharp in the darkness. "Why are you mentioning her? Why?" "I've come back. Summer and I have already suffered enough. You've gotten the results you wanted. Olivia Carter, what else do you want from me?" I didn't want anything specific. I just couldn't help myself. I felt wronged. I just desperately wanted to tear apart the mask that had been covering my life. Ethan and I had met in college. We got to know each other at a campus event, fell in love naturally, got married a year after graduation, and had our daughter Mia shortly after. Everything felt logical and perfect. I was outgoing, lively, and sociable. Ethan was introverted. His research skills were top-notch, but his lack of social skills had hindered his career advancement. I believed Ethan deserved better, so I used my networking skills to meet his institute's senior leadership through my own boss. During that time, I woke up early every morning, baking desserts and traveling halfway across the city to deliver them to the institute director's elderly mother who loved sweets. Ethan scoffed at my efforts. "My abilities are evident. Do you really have to do these embarrassing things? If this fails, it will just make things awkward for me." Careful not to hurt his pride as a scholar, I sincerely apologized for being impulsive. I laughed it off, saying, "Even if I fail, it's just kindness to an elderly person. And knowing such a leader could also help my career." The director admired my determination. Coupled with Ethan's genuine talent, The director openly endorsed him at a critical promotion meeting. Ethan, who had stagnated for 5 years, finally saw his career take off. His salary and bonuses increased rapidly, but he also became busier, handling both research and management responsibilities. There was nobody to care for Mia during a critical period of her growth. After some discussion, we decided I should step down from my main responsibilities at work, accepting a less demanding position. This allowed me more time for Mia and the household, fully supporting Ethan's career. I always thought myself lucky. When I went to pick up Mia at kindergarten, the other mothers would chat, often mentioning how they thought my family was a model of happiness. Married to my first love, my husband successful, my own job relaxing, and a cheerful, adorable daughter. I felt fulfilled and content. Although there were moments of mild regret seeing former colleagues getting promotions, I convinced myself family was a shared economic and destiny unit. My sacrifices were for the greater good of our family. That was enough. I first saw Summer Eastwood's name on a research report on Ethan's desk. 2 names at the bottom, Ethan Bennett and Summer Eastwood. I handed Ethan the herbal tea I had brewed and jokingly said, "You two have quite matching names. Just seeing your names together evokes a romantic drama in my imagination." Back then, blissfully unaware of life's hidden lies, I didn't notice the brief tenderness in his eyes when he glanced at Summer's name. She's an unmarried colleague. "Don't joke around like that," he said calmly, lowering his eyes and pushing away the report. The second time I saw Summer Eastwood's name was half a year later. I was preparing Mia's speech for her school's assembly when my laptop ran out of battery. Ethan hadn't returned from a departmental dinner yet, so I used his computer in the study to find some materials. While browsing for resources, I accidentally clicked into Ethan's cloud storage, where I saw a folder labeled My Beloved. Ethan was always meticulously organized. Inside this folder were neatly arranged subfolders labeled by date. Human intuition is truly remarkable. Before seeing this folder, the thought that Ethan might have something inappropriate going on behind my back had never crossed my mind, not even slightly. But at that moment, when I hovered the cursor over one of those files, I realized my hand was trembling uncontrollably. I sat frozen in front of the computer for 2 full hours. The My Beloved folder documented an ambiguous yet passionate relationship between a man and a woman spanning 2 years and 3 months. Initially colleagues from different departments, Ethan and Summer had been grouped together on a research project. During countless days and nights, they had passionate intellectual discussions and soulful exchanges. Slowly, one fell for the other, and the other reciprocated. Aware their relationship defied morality and societal norms, they promised each other a pure, platonic romance, never indulging in physical intimacy or succumbing to base human desires. Perhaps justified by this veneer of moral responsibility, they openly expressed their deepest feelings in the secret of Eden. Ethan called Summer the only true wife of my life. "You walked past me today, and I caught your unique fragrance. My heart skipped a beat. The world is tainted, yet you remain my pure, unspoiled sanctuary. Thank you for purifying my life. I think of your face night after night, repeating your name endlessly in my heart. I used to mourn the 33 years of my life wasted, until you appeared like a saint, making everything worthwhile." Summer called Ethan brother. "Brother, my lover, my husband. This morning, when I found some loose strands of my hair, I gently placed them on your desk. In a sense, we've become a married couple." In the meeting minutes, our names were perfectly aligned, one above the other. It filled my heart with secret joy, the 6 most beautiful words in the world dancing and intertwining. "Brother, I had an unspeakable dream last night, screaming your name wildly. I awoke with tears soaking my pillow. I think of you day and night. My performance review was the lowest, yet highly was fired. Brother, it was you secretly helping me, wasn't it? I feel guilty yet grateful. How can I repay such kindness?" Below that line was Ethan's affectionate reply. "My dear wife, don't feel guilty. Your husband willingly favors his wife. I've always been indifferent to fame and fortune, but now I'm glad I hold some power in my hands." There were countless files inside multiple subfolders, meticulously maintained and updated over time. Day after day, night after night, they poured out their hearts to each other in this folder called My Beloved. It was early September, yet the lingering summer heat remained oppressive. Sitting there in Ethan's study, I felt my body growing colder by the second, as though I had fallen into an ice cave. In a state of complete confusion, I rushed out the door. Subconsciously, I still refused to believe Ethan could betray me. I desperately clung to the idea that everything I saw on his computer was fabricated. Someone must have framed him, set him up. I tried calling Ethan, but he didn't answer. He had mentioned a departmental dinner, so I stubbornly searched restaurant after restaurant. I needed to confront Ethan face to face and get a clear answer. When I finally found Ethan at a hot pot restaurant, he was seated at the head of a lively table, smiling gently. He was the perfect image of a refined and successful man. Beside him sat a woman with long hair, wearing a white dress. She had bright, shimmering eyes and a shy, gentle expression. My steps froze. I couldn't bring myself to approach them. The group's laughter and teasing drifted over clearly. "Ethan, we admire everything about you except how tightly your wife controls you. We wouldn't dare cross her." "Yeah, Ethan, you're always so calm and collected. How can you follow your wife's amateur advice about strict discipline?" It took a moment for me to understand what they meant. Ethan wasn't naturally good at managing people. His management style was to do everything himself. Teaching others was a waste of his time, which resulted in him being overloaded and exhausted, making him the busiest person in his department with barely any time for our daughter. I had previously suggested that Ethan return to his managerial role and strictly supervise his subordinates' work, or his department would remain at the bottom of the performance rankings forever. I didn't know how Ethan conveyed my suggestion later, but clearly these young employees were holding me accountable. At that moment, I didn't care about any of that. My gaze was fixed firmly on the woman with the long hair. Seated among the group, she maintained a gentle smile, elegant and reserved. Even in the noisy restaurant, she stood apart like a beauty untouched by worldly concerns. She smiled softly and said, "All right, stop teasing, Ethan. If you all need any help in the future, just ask me." The young employees laughed loudly. If Ethan's wife were as nice as Summer, our department life would be a breeze. Too bad, right? My heart sank slowly. So it was true. The long-haired woman was indeed Summer Eastwood. The group toasted Summer, her cheeks flushing as she shyly covered her glass, smiling sweetly. Suddenly, Ethan stood up, took the glass from her hand, and drank it in one gulp. "Our department doesn't make women drink. Don't bully her. I'll drink instead." Summer lowered her gaze, smiling shyly as their eyes met. The young employees cheered and poured another round. Without hesitation, Ethan downed it again. Watching from afar, I trembled violently. Ethan had stomach issues. The slightest irritation would trigger severe pain. Over these years, besides caring for Mia, my top priority had been managing Ethan's diet to protect his stomach. I searched endlessly for home remedies, brewed medicinal soups, prepared special herbal teas, and banned anything cold, spicy, or stimulating from our meals. Though I love spicy food, I stopped adding chili to dishes. Even watermelon was taken out of the fridge ahead of time, so it wouldn't be cold when Ethan returned home. Alcohol was absolutely off limits. After years of painstaking care, his stomach finally improved. Yet here he was, carelessly tossing back one drink after another, all for the smile of his beloved Summer. Suddenly, I couldn't hold back anymore. At the peak of rage, there was no calmness, rationality, or weighing pros and cons. With my head buzzing, I stormed toward them, snatched the glass from Ethan's hand, and smashed it violently on the ground. "Bastard!" I screamed. Ethan stared at me in shock. "Ah." Startled, Summer stumbled backward, knocking over a hot pot cart. Hot oil splattered onto her face and forehead as she fell. She screamed in pain. Ethan, alarmed, shouted, "Summer!" Everyone rushed toward her. Suddenly, a violent shove struck my shoulder. Losing balance, I stumbled and fell, my forehead slamming into the corner of a table. One of Ethan's young subordinates glared at me viciously. "Where did this crazy woman come from? You won't get away after hurting someone." I held my head, feeling warm blood trickle down, blurring my vision. Through a haze of red, I saw Ethan rushing towards me in panic. Ignoring everything, I screamed hysterically. "I saw it. I saw the folder. You disgusting pair. How utterly revolting." Everything that happened afterward felt like a dream each time I thought about it during the past 3 months. A nightmare. A frightening, hideous nightmare. After hitting my head and yelling hysterically, I fainted from overwhelming emotions. When I woke up in the hospital, Ethan sat beside me, motionless, his head bowed low. Weakly, I said, "Get out. Don't appear in front of me again. You disgust me." Ethan flinched slightly, lifting his unshaven face. He spoke hoarsely. "Olivia, calm down. It's not what you think." I grabbed the thermos from the bedside table and hurled it at him. He didn't dodge. The The thermos struck his jaw hard and fell to the floor with a thud. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, picked up the thermos silently, and sighed deeply. You can hit me and curse me if it helps. At this point, I won't defend myself anymore. But I swear, Summer and I have never crossed the line physically. I glared at him, grinding my teeth. So what? Should I praise your noble morals? Should I thank you for not indulging in disgusting physical intimacy? Ethan stared at me sadly. Must you be so harsh? I pressed my trembling hands firmly into the mattress, trying to control my shaking. Harsh? Can my words ever be as disgusting as what you two did? Whenever I recall those nauseating things you wrote, I feel sick. You act like some tortured soul, wrapped in your ridiculous platonic fantasy. You're nothing but a cheating pair, just filthy scum. In the past, whenever I read novels or watch TV dramas about women who discovered their husband's infidelity, their hysterical reactions made me scoff internally. They seemed irrational and undignified, unable to control their emotions. I always thought, if the man is dirty, just get rid of him. But now, experiencing it myself, I realized I had absolutely no control. My entire being was consumed by rage and betrayal. My chest felt ready to explode. I desperately wanted to hurl every vile insult imaginable at them. I wanted nothing more than to drag Ethan and that woman down into ruin with me. Suddenly, optimistic, friendly Olivia Carter had transformed into a bitter, violent lunatic. And Ethan was now looking at me exactly as if I were insane. His reaction only intensified my rage. I grabbed a pillow and threw it at his face. Get out! Ethan slowly smoothed his hair and stood up, his voice regaining composure. You're too upset to talk rationally right now. I'll leave first. Gary already apologized to me for pushing you. You can't blame him. He didn't recognize you and acted impulsively because you startled Summer, causing her injury. Summer has scars from the burns, but she doesn't plan on holding you responsible, so don't worry. In short, this whole thing isn't as awful as you think. Calm down and think clearly. If you still can't move past it, punish me however you want. I won't complain. He bent down, placed the pillow back on the bed, and walked quietly out of the room. I lay in the hospital for 3 days, my mind hazy and foggy. I drifted in and out of sleep, and every time I woke up, it took me a few seconds to figure out if I was dreaming or awake. My mom came. She told me that Ethan had called her to explain everything in detail and asked her to look after me at the hospital because he was worried I'd be left alone. She stroked my face and sighed. He admitted his mistake honestly. He swore he never did anything with that woman. Olivia, remember how you used to have crushes on celebrities? You'd write entire notebooks full of confessions. Maybe you should treat what he wrote the same way. I shook my head. It's not the same, but it's not worth ruining your health over this. Even if you don't care about yourself, you need to think about Mia. Then Ethan's mother and his sister came. They sat on either side of my bed. Ethan's mother smiled and said, "Of course, Ethan was wrong here. But he's always been attractive to women, and now he's successful at work. It's inevitable that he'd catch the eye of some outside woman. Honestly, it's better that this happened now, before it got any worse. Take it as a lesson." Ethan's sister sipped her iced coffee. "I'm not just defending my brother, but he's always been a man of principles. I bet he was set up. And anyway, this doesn't really count as cheating. At worst, it was some harmless flirting. Maybe not even that. He would never say that kind of nonsense." Before leaving, Ethan's mother looked at me seriously. He was honest with the family about everything, which means deep down, he has a clear conscience. "I understand if you're upset, but this needs to stop here. Ethan's about to go up for vice director. If word gets out that you two are having problems, it could really hurt his career." I really didn't know what to do. Should I get a divorce? Over 10 years of love, the family I'd built, Mia's upbringing, the happy family everyone saw from the outside. My mom, Ethan's mother, and his sister all just wanted me to calm down and not destroy the family over this. To them, divorce wasn't even part of the conversation. They all assumed this wasn't a big enough issue for divorce. But my heart felt so heavy. Ethan came every day, bringing soup he'd made. When I ignored him, he'd quietly leave the container and walk out. Mia called me a few times, asking when I'd be home, complaining that Dad's cooking was terrible. I really didn't know what to do. The day before I was discharged, I decided to go for some fresh air in the little garden downstairs. That's when I ran into Summer Eastwood and Ethan together. Summer was wearing a hospital gown. Ethan was holding 2 thermal containers. They were speaking softly, standing face to face in the breeze. Summer's long hair fluttered, brushing across Ethan's face and lips. Ethan stood still, letting her hair touch him, as if it were an unspoken, intimate moment. After a while, he lowered his head and handed one of the containers to Summer. I heard her soft voice carried by the wind. "Brother." My mind exploded. I rushed over. As Ethan's eyes widened in shock, I grabbed Summer by the hair and yanked her to the ground, screaming, "How dare you? How dare you show up here, you bitch?" Summer cried out in pain, clutching her hair. A few young colleagues ran over. Seeing the chaos, they tried to stop me and explain. "Olivia, it's not what you think. We were just here to visit Summer and bumped into Ethan." As I raised my hand, ready to slap Summer across the face, my wrist was grabbed, and I heard Ethan's cold voice in my ear. "That's enough." The young colleagues awkwardly tried to pry my hand loose from Summer's hair, but I was gripping it tightly. A crowd had gathered, pointing and whispering. Summer started sobbing, her shoulders shaking. Ethan glanced at her with pity, then turned to me and raised his voice. "I swear on our daughter Mia's life, nothing happened between me and Summer. We never slept together, never even kissed, not even a hug." I shuddered and stared at him in shock. "You said, what, divorce? Why do you get to talk about divorce?" People in the crowd started gossiping. "He's swearing on his daughter's life, he must be telling the truth. Looks like the wife is the crazy one, not the mistress. She even scarred the poor girl's face. Look how vicious she is. No wonder her husband wants a divorce. He seems like an honest man. He must be at his breaking point." Stunned, I let go of Summer's hair. The young people quickly pulled her away from me. Across the crowd, Summer slowly looked up, meeting my gaze with silent ridicule, contempt, and even a hint of pity. Suddenly, I felt calm. From the moment I found that folder until this point, it was the first time I had truly, completely calmed down. I turned to Ethan and spoke slowly. "No, I don't agree to a divorce. At least, not now." 2 days after I was discharged from the hospital, Ethan finally came home. Mia had been sent to her grandmother's place. I was sitting alone at the dining table, eating a bowl of plain noodles. Ethan walked in, took off his jacket, changed his shoes, and glanced at me. He said in a flat voice that he'd been out of town for a conference these past 2 days. I kept my head down, eating, and didn't reply. Suddenly, he let out a cold laugh. "I know what you're thinking. We're not as dirty as you imagine. If you don't believe me, check the official conference news. I'm in the photos." I finished the last sip of soup, got up to wash the dishes. When I came back out, he was sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, elbows on the armrest, looking very serious and businesslike. "Olivia, at this point we need to talk," he said at last. I finally looked at him. "Let's talk." He frowned slightly, and after a long moment continued. "I admit this is my fault, but your reaction and behavior these past days have gone too far. Yesterday, Mia called me crying, asking if we were fighting. Your emotions are affecting our child. You can't just keep doing whatever you want." "I've thought about it," Ethan said, "and I came up with 2 solutions. You get to choose." I sneered. "Oh, solutions you came up with?" A vein bulged on his forehead, and he finally couldn't hold back. "Olivia, I hope you can try to solve the problem instead of just being emotional. You've yelled, you've hit me. If you ask yourself honestly, have we really done something unforgivable? If you can't get over this, we can divorce. Money, custody, you decide. So long as it's not outrageous, I don't mind losing out." I suppressed the storm inside me. "So that's plan 1. What's plan 2? He hesitated for a few seconds, then said slowly, "For Mia's sake, we don't get divorced. I promise that from now on, all contact with Summer will be strictly professional. But there's one condition." I stayed silent, waiting for the rest. He looked at me steadily. "Olivia, you need to apologize to her." For a split second, it all felt surreal. It was like the man in front of me wasn't Ethan, wasn't my college sweetheart, not the man I'd been married to for 10 years. Strangely, I actually laughed a little. Turns out, when you're too dumbfounded, you really do laugh. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, hiding whatever emotion flashed there, and his voice even softened a bit. "You probably think she's the kind of woman who just wants to move up by getting with me. But you're wrong. Everything between us started from feelings and never crossed the line. She never wanted anything from me or to hurt you. She even told me to treat you better, to give you more support at home, because she knows how much you've sacrificed for our family. These past months, you've hurt her a lot. She's young, and now she has a scar on her face. You know how cruel that is for a woman. And after what you did in public, she almost tried to end her own life. Olivia, for her sake and for yours, you need to apologize. And how exactly should I apologize? I tilted my head at him. He pressed his lips together. I'll call her. You just say a few words. That's enough to close this chapter. Sure, I said. He glanced at me, then exhaled, relieved. Once this is over, we can get back to our lives. I'm about to become vice director. The future looks good for us. Call her. When Summer's voice came through the phone, she was excited and shaky. Ethan, how did you know I was just thinking? Summer, Ethan cut her off, his voice trembling a little. Olivia's here with me. She wants to apologize for the hurt she's caused you lately. Please listen. There was a pause. When Summer spoke again, she sounded calm. Honestly, it doesn't bother me. Ethan, please don't mention divorce anymore. As long as Olivia doesn't think of us as dirty and shameless, I'll be happy. Ethan handed me the phone, giving me a long look. I took it, my voice gentle. Miss Eastwood. Hi, Olivia. I smiled, drawing out every word. How dare you both sit there and expect my apology? Hiding behind your so-called pure love, playing out this filthy drama. Do you really think you're noble, pure, and wronged? You're the victims now? Victims, my ass. You two are absolutely disgusting together. All those shameful, horny, late-night fantasies. Maybe you should say them to my face. I could just deliver your beloved Ethan right to your bed, couldn't I? Oh, but no, your love is far too pure for that, right? Your parents are elementary school teachers, aren't they? They really raised you to be pure. Maybe I should send a banner to thank them. Slut. Summer shrieked on the line. Olivia, how dare you? Ethan lunged to grab the phone, but I flung it at his face. Blood streamed from his nose. I gave him a cold smile. Ethan, you're not running from this either. I've already made a PDF with 2 years' worth of your disgusting evidence and sent it to the director, the party secretary, and the head of the union an hour before you walked in. You can finish crying over your one and only wife, but you should really start thinking about how you'll deal with the consequences tomorrow. Ethan stared at me, shocked. His face grew paler and paler, like a sheet of wrinkled paper. Everything that happened after unfolded quickly. Ethan was disqualified from running for vice director, stripped of his leadership positions, and transferred out of the core research team. Summer was moved to the logistics department and lost any chance of being promoted within the research institute. The director explained to me that since nothing actually happened between them and all I had was a PDF, there wasn't enough solid evidence to make a public announcement, so only internal disciplinary action was taken. I understood his reasoning. In fact, the fact that he'd gone this far was already more than most would do. It was all thanks to the goodwill I'd built up years ago by baking sweets for his mother. After everything, Ethan's head, once always held high, was forced to bow to fate. But he wasn't bowing to me. Now, when he looked at me, his eyes were full of disappointment and determination, like he still couldn't believe that the woman he once put at the center of his life could be so ruthless and unforgiving. After all, he hadn't actually done anything, right? With an exhausted, broken tone, he said to me, "If this is what you wanted, then congratulations. You got your wish." He gave me a faint, bitter smile, packed up his things, and moved to his mother's house. His mother and his sister showed up at my door early the next morning, banging furiously. "Olivia, you've gone too far. All this over such a small matter. You're ruining my brother's career. Don't you have a heart?" Emma fumed. "Olivia, I'm so disappointed in you," his mother said, voice full of accusation. "At such a crucial moment in Ethan's career, you stabbed him in the back. When a husband succeeds, his wife shares the glory. When he falls, she falls too. I never thought you could be so heartless, showing no loyalty at all." I looked at them calmly. Loyalty? Did he show any to me? Believe it or not, he even wanted me to apologize to that woman. He brought this on himself. If you have the guts to cheat, you'd better have the guts to deal with the fallout. "That's not cheating," his mother said in disbelief. "At most, it was some emotional flirting," Emma snorted. "Emotional cheating isn't cheating." I shot back coldly, then turned to Emma. "How would you feel if your husband called another woman his one and only wife?" "He wouldn't dare. I'd crush him," Emma blurted out. My mom showed up too, both upset and worried. "Olivia, you're not thinking straight. They didn't actually cross the line. You should have just endured it, and then you'd always have the upper hand at home. Now, not only did you get nothing out of it, but you didn't even manage to take him down for good. That was way too emotional. No matter how strong a woman is, you still need a man to lean on." I'm telling you, go get Ethan back right now. Even if you don't care about anyone else, you have to think about Mia. I wiped my tears, but my voice was steady. Mom, did you ever think about your own daughter? I know I can't actually destroy him, but just thinking about those two parading around every day like nothing happened drives me crazy. They do something wrong, and I'm the one who has to suffer? I can't let this go. I need to let out my anger, otherwise I'll suffocate. These last few days, I finally figured something out. No matter whether we end up divorced or not, no matter what I lose or have to face, there's one thing I have to do first, at any cost: vent. If I can't let out my anger, I'll never find peace. And if I can't find peace, I'll never find any quiet in my life. Now that I'm in this situation, I finally understand all those times I saw women catching their husband's mistress and going absolutely hysterical, crying, yelling, clawing at people, totally losing it in public. I believe they aren't like that in normal life. They were probably cheerful, optimistic, loving women. But when your whole world collapses, when the person you trusted most betrays you and you realize you've been lied to for so long, the anger and fear just explode out of you. I admire those women who can walk away from betrayal with cool heads, swiftly get divorced, take half, and move on. But I can't. Or maybe I can, but I can't guarantee I'll always be that calm. I was scared that, on some lonely night in the future, I'd regret not smacking someone, not pulling hair, not screaming. That I'd suffocate for years, holding in all the anger just for the sake of dignity. No, I wanted to let it out right then and there. I wasn't wrong. I was the one who got hurt. If they couldn't act with dignity, why should I care about dignity? I wasn't trying to punish them. I was saving myself. I want my future life to be beautiful and peaceful, and I refuse to let this ruin even a minute of my mood. No matter what, just knowing that they're not having a good time either makes my hands stop shaking, makes it easier to breathe, helps me sleep at night. When I went to pick Mia up, the other moms, somehow already knowing what had happened, came over to comfort me. I never thought something like this would happen in your family. Turns out all men are the same. Mia's mom, you even reported your husband to his work. I admire you, but aren't you worried he'll hold a grudge? I said, so what if he does? Worst case, we get divorced. Divorce? Everyone looked surprised. Mia's mom, it's not worth divorcing over this. Don't act on impulse. If you leave, that's just letting the other woman win. You were with him through the tough times. Why let another woman enjoy the good times? Exactly. As long as the man brings home his paycheck and comes home every night, that's already pretty good. Your Ethan is already much better than most men. I could take all the criticism and misunderstanding from everyone else. If he could cheat, he had to accept the consequences. If I needed to vent, I had to accept what came with that too. That's fair. It's all just personal choices. I expected this from the start, except for Mia. One night, after Ethan had moved out, I was just about to go to bed when I saw Mia standing in the doorway in her pajamas, eyes red and fixed on me. Mom, did you make Dad leave? Her stare startled me. Those were not the eyes of a 7-year-old girl. They were full of grievance, blame, questioning, even a hint of resentment. I quickly got up to hug her, but she turned away coldly, dodging my arms. My hand hung awkwardly in the air. I'd never seen Mia like this before. She felt like a stranger. I'd been the one raising Mia since she was born. Back when Ethan was never home during his key career years, Mia had once sadly asked me, "Does Dad not want us anymore?" I told her sincerely, "Dad loves us very much. He works so hard so you and I can have a warm home. We should love him and understand him, okay?" "Okay, Mom," she'd promised. After that, I even talked to Ethan. And from then on, no matter how busy he was, he'd make sure to spend at least half an hour with Mia every day, telling stories or playing games. Mia cherished that daily father-daughter time. Her bond with Ethan grew stronger and stronger. Grandma and Aunt Emma said, "You're the one who drove Dad away, and you're the reason he lost his job." "Mom, Dad is so good. Why are you doing this to him?" As she spoke, Mia suddenly shoved me hard and burst into tears. "I want Dad to come home. I don't care. If you don't bring him back, I won't love you anymore." I felt a chill seep through my body. Once Mia calmed down, I sat on the edge of the bed and gently asked, "What else did Grandma and Aunt Emma tell you?" Still sniffling, Mia replied loudly, "Dad and that lady didn't do anything wrong. You're just being petty. You just want a new dad." "What else?" My voice sounded so cold I barely recognized it. Mia, thrown off by my tone, paused and then answered obediently. "Aunt Emma asked me if Miss Summer is pretty. and if I'd want her to be my mom. My fingernails dug into my palm. Mia, when did you meet Miss Summer? I've seen her a lot. Sometimes when Dad picked me up, she was in the car. She'd ask if I wanted to ride with them, and I said yes. When Aunt Emma asked if you'd want Summer as your mom, was Dad there? Yeah. Did he say anything? No, he didn't. I closed my eyes, forcing the blood pounding in my veins to settle. Mia, if Dad and I split up, who would you choose? Tears welled up in Mia's eyes again. Mom, you can't leave Dad. If you do, I'll choose him. I won't choose you. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I called Ethan. Mia misses you. Come home. He was silent on the phone. I didn't say anything either. I knew he'd agree. The director had spoken to him, saying that since his misconduct wasn't severe, and given his research achievements, as long as he could resolve the family conflict, his punishment might be lifted. For Mia's sake, I can come back. But there's one condition. His voice was cold and tired. I could tell he'd had a rough time lately. Is it still about apologizing to Summer? He paused for a moment. Olivia, you've vented enough. For our child, for 10 years of marriage, let's just stop here. From now on, let's never mention this or Summer again. I agreed. Ethan moved back in. Mia was thrilled, hugging her dad and laughing. After a while, she saw me sitting alone on the couch, came over with teary eyes, hugged me and whispered, "Thank you, Mom." In the 3 months after Ethan moved back home, we became the most familiar strangers under one roof. I stayed in the master bedroom. He slept in the study. I used to cook and wait for him to come home so we could eat together. Now, I used our savings to hire a part-time cook. Ethan's position hadn't been restored. He came home on time every day, but I was busy now. I signed up for a big industry exam. Passing it would be great for my career. I'd never had time to study before. Work during the day, Mia at night. Now that Ethan had more free time, he washed the dishes and looked after Mia. The moment I finished eating, I locked myself in my room and studied as hard as I could. Those 3 months were precious to me. I was studying and I was healing. I still broke down sometimes. Sometimes I couldn't help but mention Summer's name, and Ethan would finally snap, letting out all the resentment he'd been holding in. But we were adults. The next day, everything would be back to normal. He'd ask calmly, "Is your exam over?" I'd smile lightly. "It ended half a month ago." "Then, do you want to come with me to the company family day event?" "Sure." On the day of the company's family event, Ethan and I arrived together. For a brief moment, the entire room went quiet. Every eye was on me, their glances subtle but not exactly friendly. Ethan had built a solid reputation at the Institute over the years. It was, of course, a good one. He always came across as polite and gentle, and his team adored him. After his dramatic oath at the hospital, word had spread back at the Institute, and everyone talked about his pure, almost poetic affair with Summer. It was wrong, but not the worst thing in the world. There are men who abandon their wives and kids and still live well. Compared to that, Ethan's situation really isn't so bad. Their feelings started with emotion, ended with restraint. I don't agree, but I get it. I heard Ethan's wife is a real tyrant. Poor Summer, that sweet and fragile girl. First she gets scarred by her, then publicly shamed, and now she's been demoted to the logistics department. The price she paid is too high. I'd heard all these rumors from the director's mother, back when I delivered her desserts. Yes, I kept up the deliveries. But because Ethan always mocked me for it, I stopped telling him about it. After I'd sent out the evidence, the director's mother specifically called me over for a chat. She was a kind, cheerful old lady who loved to gossip. "Regret it?" she asked, peering at me. My eyes grew hot, but I shook my head. "No, I had to get this off my chest." She laughed. "You remind me of myself when I was young. 2 years ago, I'd learned that this gentle, harmless-looking old woman had once been a high-ranking city official. But you're still not as tough as I was," she winked at me. "No matter what happened in my life, I never gave up on myself." I lowered my eyes, voice small. "I only gave up my career because of family, and for Mia. Is that really so?" Her sharp gaze cut right through me. Were those problems really unsolvable? I froze. She smiled kindly. Or is sacrificing for family just an excuse women use to avoid outside competition and social pressure? That one question hit me like a hammer. On the way home, I broke out in a cold sweat, asking myself again and again, was it really unsolvable? Was it really? After a sleepless night, I finally understood. That's the day I started looking for a part-time cook, started searching for exam dates, and bought all the prep materials I needed. Now, as I scanned the crowd at the family day, I realized how little I had in common with these people. My eyes landed on the director's mother, who sat in the center of the room, calmly eating cake. "Auntie," I called out, walking over with a bright smile. The director saw me and said, delighted, "Olivia, you're here. Please help me stop my mom from eating so many sweets." People around us looked shocked, not understanding how I could be so familiar with the director's family. Ethan seemed uncomfortable, following me closely, eyes wide. The old lady grabbed my hand, pulled me down beside her, and whispered in my ear, "I came today just to back you up." The institute was funded by private capital, and the director was a major shareholder. His mother was, in effect, the power behind the throne. My eyes grew hot again. Ethan stood awkwardly nearby. He was never good at socializing, but the director had told him to fix his family situation if he wanted his old job back, so he had no choice but to stick by my side today. Suddenly, I spotted Summer. She was holding a plate of desserts, walking straight toward us, her posture fragile but upright, a bandage still covering her forehead. "Auntie, I brought you some desserts from the logistics department," she said softly. I looked at her quietly. She lowered her eyes, stopping right beside Ethan. Whether by accident or design, I couldn't say. The director's mother frowned. "I have diabetes. I can't eat your sweets." Summer paused, glancing at the half-eaten cake in front of the old lady. "But I thought you loved sweets most?" The old woman's face didn't change. "I'm eating Olivia's cake. She made it with a sugar substitute. It's not like those overly sweet desserts from outside." Even though the event was in full swing, people kept glancing our way. The comment sounded just a bit pointed. Summer's cheeks flushed. She glanced instinctively at Ethan. He didn't move. Today, he was here to display a harmonious family, so of course he'd show no inappropriate behavior. Summer's face crumpled with disappointment and hurt. She suddenly straightened up, her voice shaking but strong as she looked me in the eye. "Olivia, I want to sincerely apologize to you today. I respect Ethan very much, and I said things I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, but I swear, nothing between Ethan and me ever crossed the line. I've paid the price. I'm begging you, please stop targeting me. My parents worked so hard to get me through grad school. I really want to prove myself." By the end, her voice was trembling, and she looked utterly helpless. Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line, his fingers curled tight. The two of them stood there side by side, heads bowed, looking like a pair of wronged, tragic lovers. Even some bystanders started giving them sympathetic looks. I suddenly smiled. "Miss Eastwood, is this so-called price you've paid just the scar?" Summer looked up at me, her expression almost saying, "Isn't it obvious? You mean your injury?" I pointed at her forehead. "I was emotional that day, but I never laid a finger on you. I don't know if you were panicked or feeling guilty, but when you saw me, you stepped back and fell on your own. Why does everyone say I scarred you? Why is everyone saying I pushed you?" Tears welled in Summer's eyes as she whispered, "Whatever you say." One of the young men nearby couldn't take it anymore and spoke up loudly, "You're in the right, but you can't hurt someone and pretend it didn't happen." I looked at him. "Gary, right?" He stiffened, not expecting me to know his name. "So it was you who pushed me that day, wasn't it?" He stammered. "I didn't know who you were. I just couldn't stand seeing someone get hurt, so I stepped in. I already apologized to Ethan." Apologized to Ethan? Was he the one who got hurt? I stared coldly in his direction, at the group of Ethan's former team members. Their faces were full of disapproval, clearly convinced I was being unreasonable. Then I looked at Ethan. His face was turned away, eyes darting sideways toward Summer, who was doing her best to hold back tears. His expression was a mix of pity and sadness. I smiled, pulled my phone from my bag, and handed it to Ethan. "You left your phone in the car. I brought it for you. By the way, I just sent the Hot Pot restaurant surveillance video to the company group chat." A hush fell over the room as everyone looked down at their phones. "The video's pretty clear. It proves two things. 1, I never touched Summer, and she knows it. 2, Gary deliberately pushed me, causing me to hit my head and get a minor concussion. I want a formal apology and compensation. Oh, and while I was sending the video, I accidentally sent that folder too. But honestly, your writing is impressive. Everyone might enjoy reading it. The only reason Ethan and Summer had survived at work was because no one had seen the real evidence. People just assumed the two of them were a little close, and I'd lost my mind out of jealousy. The management didn't dare share the files, so I took care of it myself. Ethan stared at me, horrified, frantically unlocking his phone. By now, people were whispering everywhere. She really never touched Summer. Summer just fell on her own. But I thought everyone said Ethan's wife pushed her. Even Summer herself let everyone think that. Gary's push was really hard. She was bleeding. Summer's face turned pale, lips trembling, and she shouted. It was so chaotic that day, I couldn't tell who pushed me. I'm not accusing you, I just didn't see clearly. The director's mother handed her phone back to her son and said, You were standing with someone else's husband. The others were all far away. If it wasn't Ethan's wife or yourself, then it must have been Ethan. So Ethan, was it you? Ethan's face froze. No, it wasn't. The room exploded with conversation. Ethan's colleagues held back, but their families were less restrained, saying all sorts of nasty things. She seemed so sweet, but she's really manipulative. She tried to steal someone's husband and frame the wife? Hey, look, one and only wife. Brother, it's disgusting. Which page? I only got to the part about the unspeakable night. I'll read the rest at home. The young men's faces fell. Some had brought their girlfriends, who turned to them and demanded, So this is the kind and innocent Summer you always talk about? What's really going on between you and her? Some people watched the video, others opened the files. Without exception, they shook their heads in disgust as they looked at Ethan and Summer. Summer was shaking now, finally letting out a sob and running out, hands covering her face. Ethan stared at his phone, frozen, never looking up again. Back home, Ethan's face was dark. He snapped at me. Olivia, I told you. My only condition for coming back was that you let this go, and you didn't. I just smiled. Yeah, I broke my promise. So what? He was silent for a long time, then looked at me, completely defeated. Then there's nothing left. We'll have to get divorced. I nodded. All right. He stared, completely stunned. I went to the room, got out a document, and handed it to him. This is the divorce agreement. Let me know if there's anything you want to change. He stared at me in disbelief, jaw clenched. When did you prepare this? I tilted my head, thinking, when was it? Oh, right, on Mia's birthday, the same day you and Summer had dinner together. Ethan's whole body trembled. He stared at me, deathly pale. 87 days after Ethan moved back home, I checked my exam results online. When I saw the bright red word passed, I broke down crying. Then I dialed Summer's number. Half an hour later, I sat across from her at a coffee shop, eyes swollen from crying. Her long hair flowed down as always, and as she looked at me, there was a hint of sarcasm in her smile. So even though Ethan moved back, you're not living so well either, she said lightly. I gritted my teeth. But at least I'm doing better than you. You're just a temp now, and everyone laughs at you. She smiled as if she didn't care. If you came to see me make a fool of myself, you're mistaken. I might have been transferred, but that can always be reversed. I'm not in a hurry. I looked at her angrily. So, you're just waiting for Ethan to get reinstated so he can pull you back up? She asked in a gentle tone. He's your husband. Don't you know what he'll do? My eyes were redder than ever as I choked out. I don't believe Ethan actually loves you that much. We've been married for 10 years. We have Mia. Even if he doesn't care about me, he wouldn't just ignore Mia. She smiled faintly. My connection with Ethan is on a spiritual level. One day of that is worth 10 years of your marriage. Honestly, I just don't care enough to fight you. But if I ever did, you wouldn't stand a chance. I clenched my fists and said, fine, let's bet. Mia's birthday is in 2 days. If you can get Ethan to skip her birthday and meet you instead, you win. But if he stays home, you're nothing but a joke. She glanced up with composure. And if he chooses me? Through gritted teeth, I replied, then I'll publicly praise you in front of everyone at the Institute. She smiled confidently. Deal. I stared at her. Deal. On Mia's birthday, when she called Ethan for the 10th time asking when he'd be home, Ethan switched off his phone. Mia's eyes filled with tears as she sat in silence, lips pressed together. I glanced at a photo Summer had just sent me, then gently asked Mia, do you want me to take you to find Dad? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I took Mia to the restaurant, and when we arrived downstairs, Ethan and Summer were walking out together. Both looked a little dreamy, reluctant to part. Suddenly, Summer called, Ethan, and threw herself into his arms. They hugged tightly. Mia bit her lip, staring at them, her tears flowing faster. I sighed inside. I never wanted to drag my daughter into adult problems. But when Mia screamed, "I choose Dad," the other day I realized she was already caught in the middle. Her words hurt, but deep down, I could never abandon the daughter I'd raised from birth. She always needed me, and her dad. She'd just been led the wrong way by others. She needed me, and I needed her. Let her see the harshness of life a little earlier then. It's fine. As long as she's with me, I'll teach her to shine, to be positive, to face life's mess with strength. Back in the present, Ethan stood frozen, face pale, voice hoarse as he tried to explain. Summer just wanted a formal goodbye. I owed her that, so I gave a slow smile. So you cheat, and the person you feel sorry for is your lover? That's fine, I don't care. But Mia might need a while to recover. He looked confused. What do you mean? Why does Mia need to recover? I replied warmly. You hugged Summer for half an hour that night. Mia and I saw the whole thing. Didn't you notice she's barely spoken to you these past few days? It was only after she told me that if we divorced, she'd stay with me, that I finally drafted that divorce agreement. Ethan's lips quivered. No, it's not like that. It was just a goodbye hug. Olivia, did you take Mia there on purpose? She's your own daughter. How could you? I shot him a cold, contemptuous look. You're always like this. You cheat, but blame me for not letting go. You hurt me, but blame me for breaking down. You missed your own daughter's birthday to be with your lover, and then you blame me for letting Mia see the truth. For all the years I wasted on you, for every time you built your paradise on my patience and sacrifice, for all of it, I regret you. You and your little Eden are just like you, fake, selfish, utterly disgusting. Ethan Bennett, I despise you. What I didn't expect was that Ethan refused to get divorced. That morning I woke up in a good mood, only to find him sitting on the sofa with his head down, looking like he hadn't slept all night. When he saw me, he suddenly got up, walked over, and slowly knelt down. Olivia, I'm not getting a divorce. I never wanted to be with Summer. What I had with her was only a connection of minds, a way to escape from work stress. This was my fault, all of it. I only suggested divorce before because I knew you wouldn't agree. But last night I thought it over. Olivia, I love you. I love Mia. Please give me another chance. I swear I'll never waver again for the rest of my life. I broke down, completely shocked, and yelled, Summer was the only real wife in your heart. How can you say you never wanted to be with her? What about those hundreds of documents? What about all your passionate secret exchanges? Was everything I'd done to prepare for this divorce meaningless? Ethan was stubborn. He seemed determined to prove himself to me with actions. From that day on, he got up early every morning to make breakfast. Mia and I never paid him any attention. I went to work, she went to school, and we barely exchanged a word with him. During the day, he'd send me little updates, pictures of a perfect leaf he'd seen on the sidewalk, what he had for lunch, a theory he'd come up with. At night, he washed dishes and did housework, saying goodnight to us over and over with patient persistence. I couldn't take it anymore and reached out to Summer. When I saw her, I was surprised. She was thinner, cheekbones sharp, dark circles under her eyes, lines at the corners of her mouth, lips turned down. The once soft and charming woman now looked almost bitter. Olivia, you lied to me, and now you have the nerve to come see me, she said coldly. I thought for a moment and realized she was talking about our bet, how I'd promised to praise her in public, but instead had sent out the surveillance video. Yes, I lied about that. She clenched her teeth and spoke slowly. You've ruined me. I can't stay at the institute. Everyone looks at me like I'm a monster. I can't take it another day. And now, you even made Ethan ask for the money back that he gave my mother for her illness. I froze. He gave you money? Wasn't this supposed to be a pure platonic relationship? How does money fit into that? It was just emergency money for her medical bills. Don't lump me in with gold diggers. I'm not that cheap. I was genuinely curious. How much did he ask for back? She sneered. Don't play dumb. Didn't you tell him to get the full $200,000 back? $200,000. I let out a long sigh and leaned back in my chair. It was almost funny. All those years I'd spent scrimping and saving, Ethan could just hand over $200,000 in an instant. But that was all I felt. Mild amusement. Compared to how crazed I'd been before, Ethan's affairs no longer stirred up much emotion in me. I looked at Summer. You can't pay it back? She glared at me. I told you it was for my mother's treatment. It's gone. I paused for a few seconds. If you really don't want to repay it, I guess there's another way. A month later, the director's mother called me out of the blue. Olivia, "Are you okay?" I was confused. "I'm fine. What's wrong?" She told me something explosive. Ethan had been slapped at work by Summer's parents. They burst in, both of them, and slapped him hard right in front of everyone. Summer was crying, and her dad yelled that Ethan got her pregnant and wanted her to get an abortion for money, saying he had to take responsibility or they'd never leave him alone. No one believed it at first. Maybe they had the wrong guy. But Summer insisted it was true, shouting that Ethan was the father. Ethan shouted back that she'd drugged him, that he'd been tricked. And if that was true, how did it happen a second and third time? After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. That day, I'd told Summer she didn't have to repay the money. She asked me how. I said, "Just take Ethan away for good." All I wanted was her help to get the divorce done. I never thought she'd go so far. I could barely believe it. Looking back at all those passionate, loving words in the My Beloved folder, it was just absurd, so ironic. Ethan had told me, "Don't think so badly of us. We never crossed the line. It was pure, just feelings." It had all sounded so lofty and noble. But now, their love on the pedestal had fallen to pieces, dirty and ugly. And as the betrayed wife, I, who had once gone crazy and lost all dignity, now felt only a kind of cold detachment at this final dramatic news. Ethan and I got divorced. He didn't want any of the assets or Mia's custody. He left with nothing. When the cooling off period ended and we signed the papers, he was silent the entire time, his eyes red. From the first time he slept with Summer to the second and third times. He knew he had no face left to say anything to me. At the very end, he looked at me for a long moment, eyes blank, then turned and walked away. His mother and sister tried to cause trouble about the divorce settlement, demanding a new division of assets. But Ethan rushed in, eyes wild, and shouted them down. "Do you want to push me over the edge? Do you want to push me until I break?" Everything that happened after, I only heard through others. When Summer was 8 months pregnant, her parents forced Ethan to marry her. There was no wedding, just a marriage certificate. A month later, Summer gave birth to a son with cerebral palsy. It was probably conceived the first time she drugged him. People sighed. A cursed bond brings a cursed child. Pity the kid. Ethan never left the institute, but he didn't get his old position back. He stayed an ordinary researcher. Summer stopped working after getting pregnant, and after the baby, she couldn't work at all. Her parents moved in from out of town to help with their grandson's constant care. Ethan earned about $10,000 a month, but had to support 4 adults and a child who needed therapy all the time. As for me, my career soared. After returning to my job, I ended up leading the company in performance for the year. My salary multiplied. I managed a bigger team. Mia was doing great. I hired a well-paid young full-time nanny to cook and help with her homework. My mom came to help sometimes too. She finally admitted, "A woman who can stand on her own is truly strong." After the divorce, Mia became more mature than kids her age, but she stayed cheerful, positive, and lively. Just like me, I was grateful I never let her go. 2 years later, I ran into Ethan and Summer again. I was taking Mia to the hospital to see the director's mother, who had sprained her ankle. On our way out, we saw Ethan and Summer fighting in the lobby. They looked completely different from before, and a crowd had gathered to watch. Summer was dried up and bitter looking, her mouth twisted as she shouted, "Bullshit. Your family is useless. If it weren't for my parents working themselves to death for your kid, what right does your family have to act high and mighty? They even dared to insult my parents, those 2 old witches." Ethan looked haggard, his hair streaked gray, though he was only 35, wearing a jacket I'd bought him years ago. He shot back, voice harsh, "You're the one who's full of it. Your whole family is like a bunch of leeches, sucking me dry and still wanting more. All of you live off my money, don't touch your own retirement, and still complain I don't earn enough. Damn it." Suddenly he turned, and our eyes met. He went silent, lips trembling, eyes full of panic, shame, and confusion. Mia softly called out, "Dad." Ethan's hand shook as he tried to reach out, but stopped halfway. With a low cry, he ran out of the crowd. Driving home, I noticed Mia was quiet the whole way. Worried the scene at the hospital had upset her, I asked gently, "Mia, what are you thinking about? You can talk to me." She tilted her head. "Mom, I was just thinking your name is really pretty." I hadn't expected that, and couldn't help laughing. "Is it? I always thought it was too plain. I even cried about it when I was a kid." Mia shook her head and recited softly, Peach blossoms and spring laughter fill the garden. Wine and song warm the heart into the night. Mom, what a beautiful picture. I was stunned and suddenly remembered a scene from long ago. Ethan sitting in our bright, elegant study as I handed him a cup of steaming herbal tea. I happened to glance at 2 names and joked, Ethan Bennett, Summer Eastwood. Just reading those names together sounds like a tragic romance novel. She's a single coworker. Don't make jokes like that, he'd said, lowering his eyes. Our car sped down the springtime road. Outside, everything was bright and alive, bursting with color. Yeah, I said, smiling. It turns out Mom's name really is beautiful. If this chapter moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Nova Media. Thanks for listening.